Hi, Digital Chiefs. So you've decided that you might need some help with your startup and thinking of applying for an accelerator program. There are so many startup programs these days for different stages, different sectors. Some are run by VC funds, while others are run by corporates. How do you tell which one is the best one for you? Is it really worth the 3 to 6 months' time to invest in participating in one? As someone who has launched, managed, and mentored on multiple global accelerator programs, here's what I think you should look out for. Let's kick off with the most obvious one, track record. This could also be tied to their brand and reputation. Who's running their program? What's their experience? Have they run programs before? What have their graduating companies gone on to do? If it's a global program, then you want to be looking specifically at the local program that you plan to apply for, because different programs in different regions will yield different results. Note, this might not be a reflection of the quality of the program or those who run it. It could just be the differences between the region and the stage of that startup ecosystem. Some ecosystems will simply have fewer investors, and therefore the valuations will tend to reflect this. So you should be evaluating the success of the program based on similar startups in the same stage, sector, and location. Are the startups coming out of their program doing better or worse compared to the local ecosystem? There are so many brand new programs launching every year. In that case, it's best to look at the program team. What have they run in the past? Have they launched other accelerators? Have they launched other funds? Note a key difference between the activities versus the results they delivered. I say this as I've seen a number of program managers measure the success of their program through the number of contact hours, events, and mentors they've put you in front of. These are unlikely to be the same areas you measure the success of your startup. So in order to evaluate this properly, you will need to know what success looks like for you and for your startup. Is it fundraising? Is it high valuation? Is it more customers or more revenue? Or is it actually a couple of pilots with some corporate partners? Figure out what matters most to you and do the research and ask questions based on this criteria. Number 2, who will you get access to? How often and in what way? If you are primarily entering a program for access to 1 or 2 specific people, i.e. a senior partner, how much access will you have of them? Will it be in a group environment or one-on-one coaching? Roles within an accelerator can be divided in a number of different ways. Sometimes the senior members of the program are the face of the program and are there to negotiate the terms when you enter the program. However, once you are in, you might be actually handed off to another EIR or a program director or manager who will manage the day-to-day and actually do the mentoring. It doesn't mean that you won't have access to that senior manager. It might just mean that you have less time than you initially thought. So again, if you're applying for the program for access to 1 or 2 key people, then it's best that you know upfront how much access you'll have of them so that you can manage your own expectations. This also extends to mentors and any alumni. So while we're on mentors, look at the companies they're from. What are their titles? What are they responsible for? Again, how much time will you have with each mentor? How will you access them? Is it through an introductory email, or will you actually in fact have a sit-down session with them? How long is the session? Will you be able to access the global mentors and global alum if you are part of a global program? Will that be during the program or once you graduate? Are the mentors the ones currently listed on their website, or are they stored somewhere else? Are they confirmed for this year's class, or really are they a representation of the previous years? If you've watched my previous video on should you join an accelerator program, then you'll know the network, i.e. the alumni, the investors, and the corporate partners will be a key reason why you should participate. So understanding and evaluating how you'll get access to that network and in what way is incredibly important. Watch out for marketing of key people and brands. They might refer to previous classes, or it might be limited to a certain cohort of the class. People also change roles and companies all the time, but get a sense of the caliber of the mentors. Will access to this network help you to achieve the goals you set out for your startup. I.e., if you are looking for fundraising, are there at least a couple of investors in the network? I'd say have at least 5 to 10 people that you are very interested in meeting with before you apply for the program. This might include the actual program team. Make sure it's not just an intro email you'll get. If you've taken my online fundraising course, you'll already know how to cold email. So if it's under 5 people that you're super excited to access through the actual program, it might make more sense for you to get in touch with them in another way, rather than spending 3 months into a program to access a very small section of their network. Number 3, funding. More specifically, this refers to follow-on funding. Now, with running a startup, I'm going to assume at some point you are looking to raise capital, in which case the ability of the accelerator to invest before, during, or after you graduate is going to be important. If the accelerator has done its job, then you should be on a faster growth track, and therefore it's only natural that you'll be looking for more capital to fuel that growth. So be sure to ask some of these questions. Is there funding to make follow-on investments? What's the typical check size? What % of companies from the program get follow-on funding? What is the criteria and process for follow-on capital? Who are the decision makers on this? I.e., do you have to convince one person, or is it a brand new board and a brand new team that you actually need to convince? Knowing the structure of the fund is important. A local fund will tend to have a local investment team, i.e., those you're interacting with during the actual program. If, however, the follow-on funding is coming from a large global fund or one that is located overseas, then it might mean that you need to convince a different investment team even after graduating from their accelerator program. Sometimes there is both a local fund and an overseas global fund, in which case the follow-on funding might be split both ways. I'm not going to go into too much more detail about the structure of VC funds and their accelerators. However, I did want to mention it just in case follow-on funding is important to you. Number 4, after graduation. Now, this point is often skipped over when it comes to accessing accelerator programs. It somewhat links back in with the funding and the network in the previous points. Given accelerators are typically under 12 months and the startup journey is years, it would make sense to ask some questions around what support there is after you graduate. An important point in APAC, given so many new programs are launching every year. What will you get access to as their program grows, as they graduate new companies, and as they potentially launch new funds as well? I.e., can they still come to some events? Will the offers and benefits be extended to the alum? In what ways can they keep in touch so that you can still access their support? Or is it simply quite clean cut because there are limited resources? Number 5, investment terms. You're probably wondering why I've left this point for so late. The reason is twofold. 1, it's a little complicated. Number 2, the amount of funding you receive from an accelerator should be the least important reason for you to spend months in a program. Now, investment terms are a whole online course in itself. If you are particularly interested in that topic, make sure that you're subscribed to my newsletter, and I'll be sure to let you know when that course is launched. So again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm going to try and keep this part short and very general. There are only really 3 scenarios that I've seen for entry terms into an accelerator. Sometimes these are called program terms or accelerator terms. Number 1, you pay an upfront fee, or number 2, you receive an investment for some exchange of equity in your business, or number 3, a combination of these 2. Sometimes term sheets can be negotiable. However, typically with seed stage accelerators, everyone is on a similar term sheet agreement, and most companies are valued about the same. Pro tip, if you believe you have some leverage above other participants, i.e. perhaps your technology is a little bit more built out, perhaps you have customers already, perhaps you've already raised a little bit of capital. In that case, you might want to see if you can negotiate slightly better terms. You will, of course, have to provide some evidence and negotiate this. Surprisingly, after many years of managing accelerator programs, only 20% or so of founders try and renegotiate their term sheet. So program managers are probably going to hate me for that tip. Otherwise, a standard term tends to include a first right of refusal, i.e. the ability for the accelerator or for their fund to reinvest. That tends to be a positive. And on top of that might be information rights, i.e. access to your reporting. Generally speaking, terms should be reflective of the amount of money the accelerator is investing, i.e. if they're investing less than 100K, there should not be terms in there such as voting rights, veto rights, board rights, as well as the put right. These are all potential red flags depending on the context. So again, I'm trying to keep this video short. If you're not sure what a couple of these terms are, please leave me a comment below and I'll pop up another video on basic investment terms. Try and get a sense of what is important to the accelerator and what your boundaries are as well. Which parts are you willing to negotiate and which parts you are not willing to negotiate. Good programs will tend to flag their red lines early and their non-negotiable terms up front because they've done so many deals. But if it is a newer program, they might in fact still be formulating what works for them. The last question you should be asking the program is, how do you get the most out of the program? i.e., what's the difference between those who've done well out of the program and those who have not? This is one of the questions that allows you to evaluate how well they know startups, how much they work with founders, and also what are the unique parts of the program? What is the core value that they deliver? For example, if they focus on all the events you'll be attending, then you know that they tend to measure their results based on activities. If, however, they talk about being prepared to meet with mentors, then you know they tend to pride themselves on the quality of their network. If they're quite vague, it might mean that they really don't know what a successful program is for them, in which case it's a bit of a red flag. Be an active listener here. Try and read between the lines. What are they focused on? Does it match what you're looking for in the program? So that's a wrap. I'm sure I've given you a fair few things to think over. I know for me, some of my own accelerator graduates have been able to close rounds even before they've graduated from the program, while others have been able to achieve a 10x growth in a short amount of time. I still have very fond memories of the accelerator that I personally participated in. I've made lifelong friends in a couple of them. A great program will deliver in spades many years after you've graduated and can really help you get unstuck. Now, if you've been lucky enough to get into an accelerator program, you might want to check out my next video on how you can make the most out of an accelerator program. See you soon, Digital Chiefs.